Last night something happened and it got me thinking about changing plans and how resistant I've been a lot of my life to changing plans, changing my mind, not carrying through with something once I've decided what to do, um, difficulties with change in general. And so I want to reflect a little bit on that. But first, this is where I woke up this morning, this beautiful lake. This is Springer Lake, New Mexico. And it's dispersed camping, primitive camping, no services, just a spot on the road where they let you pull out and stay if you want to. And it's beautiful. My windshield is also crawling with bugs, so I will not be getting out this morning. And it looks like a lot of them are mosquitoes, and I am quite popular with mosquitoes, so I'm going to pass on that particular treat. If you notice let's see, can you see the waves, the very slight rippling effect on the water? I love watching that. I can sit here. I've actually been sitting here for a couple of hours already, just watching the water ripple in the slight breeze. I can tell which direction the breeze is blowing by which way the ripples are rippling. Okay. So I ended up here. This was not actually where I planned on sleeping last night because I was driving down from Colorado coming into New Mexico, and I had picked out a camp spot. There's an app that I use called Allstays that I used to use extensively to find these kind of remote free camping places. And it's in general very good and very reliable, but it does rely on user inputted data, and um, it kind of it scrapes multiple other sources of data, um, and not all of the data is always accurate or up to date or complete. So especially in these remote places where there's not a lot of information in general, very often not having any reviews or user submitted data, it's kind of hit and miss what you're going to end up with. And there was this one spot, it actually had one review. It was 5-star review. It was a remote dispersed camping on the top of a mesa. It had 2 lakes up there. They said it was gorgeous views, beautiful, but it was also at the end of a 13-mile trail, like leaving the highway. It was 13 more miles to get to, and the only information about that road was that the very end of it was a very steep and twisty road. And that made me pause. I've been up some really steep roads occasionally with the van. One time I went up a road that was really a bad idea. I should not have gone up, but it didn't look bad when I started. And by the time I got to the place where it was a bad idea, there was no way to turn around, and there was no way to really do anything besides continue on. And the van made it, and at the very top there was camping and obviously place to turn around. So I made it fine, but it was kind of nerve-wracking. So I knew that I could do steep roads, and also it depends on the person's opinion of what is steep. Like, is this steep for a little in-town car? Is this steep for a cargo van, which is what I've got? Is it steep for what? Like, and who decide, like, is that person's opinion of steep my opinion of steep? So there wasn't a lot of information, but it sounded beautiful. I thought I'd give it a try, and I decided in advance that I would be willing, if I got up there and it was too steep for my comfort, I would turn around and I would be okay with going back, even right before the end. I've done this before. I'm okay with it. And I was trying to get there before dark because I wanted to do that. I in general try to get to my camping spots where I can see them, but especially when I know that the road might have some issues. So I had been kind of pushing the 4.5 hour or so drive to get there before dark, and I knew it would be kind of cutting it close, but by the time it was starting to get dark right about the time I was turning off the freeway. It was also starting to rain. I turned off the freeway, and about 50 feet later, the pavement ended, and it was going to be gravel. That whole 13-mile road was going to be gravel, and it was raining. Not heavily, but I could see the road was a very soft road. It was soft gravel, not like hard packed dirt. And I was just imagining, it was also fully dark by this point. I was just imagining going up there and going, is this a road that I want to do tonight? Like under these conditions, specifically under these conditions. No, it's not. And I had looked in the area, I looked on the map, the Allstays app, and I had 2 backup plans. Always good to have a backup plan. But the backup plan would involve me backtracking about 6.5 miles up the freeway. And when I started this van life, oh, it like going back was almost impossible for me. Once I'm past something, I could not go back. I don't know what it was, but it was like if I missed a turnoff, nope, not going. I can't. If I wanted to take a picture of something, it was a beautiful spot, but I just passed it. Nope, I'm not pulling over. I'm not going back, not even 50 feet. Like, I just couldn't. If I was in a city and I needed a gas station, I missed the turn and went past that gas station. Oh, nope, looking for the next one. Who knows how far it is, but can't go back. I don't know what it was about like the going back thing, but I just, my brain could not compute. And over the time living in the van, I did slowly relax that. It started with just like one incident, like one time that I allowed myself to go back, and then turned out that that was okay. Like nothing bad happened. My self-esteem did not collapse. Like literally nothing bad happened. I just got the whatever it was that I wanted. I don't remember what that first time was, but it was just that first time, and then another time, and then another time, and over time it slowly became easier for me to do it. It's still kind of a mental gymnastics. Like I have to intentionally remind myself that it is okay to go back, but I do, and I'm usually okay with it at this point. But this would be like 6.5 miles going back, backtracking up the freeway where I just came down in the dark to another place, which was not nearly, they said it was like 4.5 miles outside of this little town that that I'd be going through. And again, really no information about the conditions of the road or anything, but I figured 4.5 miles, even if it is gravel, that's a whole lot better than 13. And it doesn't say anything about steep roads or twistiness or anything like that. And there's also supposed to be a lake there. So I thought, that sounds like the next most likely spot. I'll give it a try. And so I did. I had stopped where I'd pulled off of the freeway about, maybe 50, 100 feet onto the gravel road, where I was thinking about it, and I'm like, no, not this. So I looked up. I fortunately did still have a little bit of cell coverage and could get the app. I had forgot. I used to save, like, take pictures of the screen of the Allstays app of my backup plans, so that in case I lost cell coverage, I would still have information. I had forgotten to do that. I did that after the fact. Getting back to the van is remembering these habits, these little tricks that I used to do. Anyway, so I backed up, turned around, and went back up the freeway 6.5 miles, and then went through the little town of Springer, and um, there, and like a couple more miles outside of town, about 2.5 miles outside of town, the the paved road ended, and it was dirt road from then on. And I paused and thought, am I okay with this? And I said yes. I'd already decided that I was okay with this, and so far everything had been pretty flat. It was going to be about 2 to 2.5 more miles, I was estimating, of dirt road. I thought I could handle that. I've done way longer, but it was pitch black. It had stopped raining, fortunately. It was just sprinkling at that point. Um, but so anyway, I continued on, but it was pitch black. I was looking for this dispersed camping spot. Like, dispersed camping doesn't really mean like it looks like a camping spot. It doesn't look like a camping spot. It's often a wide spot in the road where the authorities won't have a fuss if you stay there. Like there's no fire pit, there's no grill, there's no hookups, there's nothing. And that's exactly what I found. Is I found about 2.5 miles down the road, it got really, really narrow at one point when I was going over what I couldn't really see well, but I think I will have to check it on my way out. I think was a little sort of a dam on the edge of the lake. I could sort of see water rippling just to my left, and there was this little the road, and it dropped off on either side. So I don't know what was on the other side. I don't think it was water, but it definitely dropped off. So it was just a little bit wider than my van. So that was a little bit nervous making. But it just sort of wound around the lake, and on the other side of the lake there was one pullout area, and I decided to drive a little bit farther on to see if there were other options, and I found this pullout where I stayed, and I drove a little bit farther, and then it was getting away from the lake, so I turned around and came back to this second pullout, and I could kind of tell that I think I was pretty near the water, but it was so pitch black, it was hard to really tell. And I woke up to being, yeah, right next to the water, and it's beautiful. And a lot of my life, I've had a hard time with, as I said, changing plans, with not completing something when I said that I would do it, with not keeping my word. I had these very grandiose ideas about what it meant to be a person who keeps their word. And I think that some point in my childhood, I latched onto that as a virtue, as a thing that is good to do. And I probably heard people praise that, or maybe criticize people who didn't keep their word or something like that. And I heard the word flake a lot. And in my mind, it was like, either you keep your word or you are a flake. You are unreliable. You are good for nothing. You are a loser. I know those are extreme judgmental words, but that's how they landed in my head, with the extreme judgment. And I didn't want to be that. So for me, it was completely all or nothing. It was either I always keep my word, I always do what I say I'm going to do, I always follow through, no matter what, no matter if the circumstances change, no matter if it turns out to not be a good idea, no matter if I don't want to anymore, no matter if anyone cares, no matter whether it's a big deal or not, whether it's a matter of virtue or morality or ethics, or whether it's a matter of finishing a freaking book that I don't even want to read. Like, it's not assigned by school or anything. It's just I picked it up and I thought, hey, I'll try it. But I finish what I start, so I have to finish the book, even if I hate the book. So it was like, either I'm always 100% like reliably, absolutely, completely keep my word, or I'm a flake and a loser and a good for nothing, and I will never get anywhere in life, and I will die homeless and alone and never having amounted to anything, and it will ruin my entire future. And And it was this extreme all or nothing. And I twisted myself into pretzels over and over throughout my life to follow through. And it got to the point that many times I wouldn't start things because I couldn't 100% guarantee that I could follow through, that I could always continue this. And of course, you can't guarantee that you can always continue something, especially depending on what it is. But there was no room in my brain for the possibility that it was okay to change your mind. And I realize that as I'm describing this, it sounds very black or white, and it was to a very large extent. But it's not like there weren't times where I changed. Like, there were times when I did change my mind. Like, it did happen, but I got on my own case a lot about it. Like, I was very self-deprecating about it. I was very judgmental. Um, I had to explain, like overly explain, like well beyond what's needed, what's what well beyond what was reasonable or expected by anyone else. Like when I would leave a job, it was a big deal for me. And I got it in my head, especially around jobs. Like I got it in my head that because I hadn't found like the career, the one thing that I was meant to do for my entire life at an early age, that I hadn't found it and continued with it and like poured my whole heart and soul into it and made it everything and continued on with it until I was physically unable to work anymore because of age or infirmity, and that because this wasn't my career path, that somehow I was a flake, that I didn't follow through with things. And I idealized the very few people that did have that kind of career path. Like that's something that excuse me, my eyes are burning a little bit from allergies. Um like people like Stephen Hawking, Jean-Luc Picard, definitely a role model for me for much of my life. There were these few people, often scientists, but not always, but who I really latched onto as they knew at an early age exactly what they wanted to do with their lives, and they just poured themselves into it and they did it. And I kept looking for that. I kept searching for that. And when I would get interested in something, I would be like, I would dive into it in a very autistic, special interest, obsessive kind of way. But then after some period of time, um, often years, but still, like, I would kind of move on and like, and want to do the next thing. And I was really, really self-critical about that. It took a lot of unpacking my expectations of myself. It took a lot of um, understanding this black and white thinking. It took a lot of personal journey to do that. And I realized that I'm equating passing a um, passing a gas station and not being willing to turn back with not having a single track career. But I think they are related. I think it's the same sort of underlying mentality of I can't change once I've started, or else I am this version that I had labeled as bad. Therefore, I must be this extreme opposite. And I no longer think that those two extremes are the only options. Like the opposite of one extreme. Well, let me rephrase that. Like the only other option is not the extreme opposite of one extreme. I think part of what it took is having these experiences of in the van of changing my mind in a situation in which it really did matter. And then seeing that it not only did not not only did the bad thing not happen, but also it actually was a good thing. Like, it was useful for my safety. Like last night, pushing on that 13-mile gravel road in the rain, where I knew it was going to be steep and twisty at the end, to just in order to, in my own mind, keep to the place that I had planned. And I had texted to people beforehand when I knew that I had self coverage, like, this is where I was planning on going, but I had told people that this is where I was going, so therefore I have to keep my word, and in my own mind I have to keep my word. But I've been through this enough that last night actually was not a big deal. It was just a matter of, is this really what I want? No, not really. Let me go find another place. That involves backtracking. Is that what I want? Well, I don't love the backtracking, but I'm okay with it because I want safety, because I want a better experience tonight. I want to not get myself into a potentially difficult situation, physically unsafe situation. And it was these kinds of things that happened when I was living in the van the first time, happened over and over. Like, I would trust my own judgment to not get myself into a bad situation, even when it meant changing the original plan, even when it meant telling someone that I was changing my plan. And finding out, like, actually living the fact that I survived the night. And it was a good thing. Like, I think I shared with you, yeah, I shared a story in a previous video about how backed I backed the van about a mile through along a path to avoid a flash flood, to get out of the riverbed and seek higher ground. Like, I survived the night because I did that. Looking back on it, I probably wouldn't have perished that night, but I didn't know that at the time. Like, what I knew was that a flash flood was possible because I could see the signs of it. I could look around me and see, this is possible. I want to keep myself safe. And whether or not it turned out to have actually flooded, it was a safe thing to do. It was looking out for my own safety. What I used to say to myself all the time was, I'd rather be safe and wrong than sorry and wrong. So having these experiences where I trusted my own judgment to get out of a situation, or to not put myself into a situation that I could see the signs were bad, that the signs were that this is not a safe situation, this is not an appropriate situation, this is not, whether it's physical stuff or social stuff, like, I can see the red flags there, and I trust myself. I'm allowing myself to change my mind, and what happens is I'm safe at the end of it. Having had that experience enough times in a very physical situation like this, like where it actually has been a matter of potentially survival, it's built the trust in myself that it's okay to do that. And it's built, like, it's been kind of deconstructing this all or nothing, either I keep my word or I'm a bad person. In fact, wouldn't it be bad for me to keep my word and stay in a bad situation where I get hurt or potentially perish, just in order to keep my word? That actually sounds less virtuous to me. So it's been deconstructing this all or nothing, I have to keep my word or else I'm a flake. Because it's not just about the keeping the word, it's about, what is the purpose here? Like, what is it? What's really at stake? what is at stake? My word? No. Like, it doesn't make me an unreliable person. It makes me a safe person to be around because I know what's safe and what's dangerous. And then there was this one time where I had deconstructed this enough, and I think my brain was starting to loosen up on this enough that I don't remember what prompted it, but I was thinking about like my job history, and I had been really hard on myself for a long time about this whole I didn't have a single career forever. Not that I was changing jobs all the time, but I had had a number of jobs, just as many people do. The majority of people do. Anyway, so what I did is I actually made a list of every single job that I'd ever had in my entire life. And then I wrote down the actual reason why that job ended. The actual reason, not the reason that my anxieties were telling me, not the reason, like the interpretation, but like just the circumstances of why that job ended. And there were a couple of them that it was only intended to be a temporary, like a summer job. Like it was only intended to be for this school semester or the school year. Like it was never going to be a long-term thing. So of course it ended. There was a couple of jobs that there's no way I would have wanted to stay there long term, and I never intended to stay there long term. I just needed a little bit of money for a few months, and so I did that job, and it was fine. And I mean, I didn't love it, but it was never going to be a long term thing. I just needed some money, and fulfilled the purpose of getting money, and I did the job. They got the work and I got the money, and we parted ways, and it was fine. Like that doesn't make me a flake. That makes me resourceful in being able to deal with a job in order to get what I needed. There was really only one job in my entire life in which ended under difficult, like really unfortunate circumstances. And it still wasn't about me being a flake. And there was a couple of jobs that I would have liked to have continued had it not been for burnout, had it not been for some circumstances. But again, that wasn't me being a flake. That was my body saying, no, you can't continue this. I'm going to shut down because you have not been recognizing the signs that something is wrong here and that you've been pushing too hard. So I'm going to force you to stop. But that wasn't, again, that was not me being a flake. There wasn't a single thing on that list that was about me being a flake. There were a variety of circumstances, but none of them was me being a flake. And that was a huge revelation to me. And I carried that list around with me for from room to room for 3 days because I just needed to hold on to it. I needed to reinforce that. And I showed it to everyone who would listen. And I showed it to my therapist and to explain the whole thing to my mom. And I went through this over and over because I needed that reinforcement. And then I started questioning, what would it actually mean to be a flake? Like, what would that look like? And I honestly still don't know, because the closest that I can come up to is someone who doesn't keep their word on a frequent basis without regard for how it affects other people, but who makes promises that were inappropriate in the first place, that they know other people are counting on, and changes their mind without regard for the other person or how it will impact other people or even how it will impact them, without a good reason for it. But when this happens over and over and over, maybe something like that could be considered a flake, but I still start questioning, like, why would someone enter into that kind of behavior pattern? And I can think of reasons why someone might develop that kind of behavior pattern, because that sounds to me not like eh, not like a eh, I don't know, not like what, but that sounds to me like defense mechanisms. That sounds to me like probably the result of trauma history. Because like that, the whole without regard for other people aspect, that's not inherent to neurodivergence. That's not inherent to ADHD at all. Um, that's about having been hurt, having been disregarded enough themselves that those relationships are difficult or painful, and so one withdraws from them or engages in difficult behaviors with other people as a way to protect themselves by not getting into them, or having conflicting desires themselves. I don't know exactly how this would work. I'd have to think through it some more, or but it seems to me that there's going to be some underlying deep pain there that's manifesting in these ways. So still, that's not really being flaky. That's being hurt. And hurt people hurt people. Okay. Where do I want to go with this? I think I want to wrap this up. I'm just watching the water rippling, the way the wind has been picking up a little bit. I'll give you another view. Can you see that water rippling? I love this. I can just watch this for hours. And often have. These are some of the things that I've been thinking about. I'd be curious to see what this reflection of mine inspires in you. I'd love it if you share some thoughts in the comments. Take care. Wish you and Nira a wonderful day.